This video is brought to you by RevTown. Hey, yo, what up, Wisecrack? Chris here with the latest in our book versus film series. And hold up, that's kind of a lie. Today, it's technically anime versus film, but since you're probably watching the show with subtitles, you're technically reading, and you read books. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Today, we're taking a peek at another Wisecrack favorite, Death Note. Now, you probably know about Death Note from the extremely bingeable anime series, but it actually started out as a manga, which also spawned several Japanese live-action films and, in 2017, an American adaptation on Netflix. We wanted to compare the beloved anime to its source material, but it turns out that the show is an extremely faithful adaptation, like Sam Gamgee level faithful.
Come on, Mr. Frodo. I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you.
The two plot lines are essentially the same, with one exception, which we'll get to later. So instead, we're diving headfirst into the absolute train wreck that is the Netflix live-action film. Spoilers ahead for pretty much every cultural product that's ever borne the iconic Death Note font, except for the musical. We're gonna skip that. Let's get into it in this video on anime/manga versus film, Death Note. And before we continue, I want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, RevTown. RevTown jeans are the epitome of style and comfort. We've all been cooped up in our homes this past year, so I understand that it's easy to just throw on an old pair of sweatpants every day. However, I found myself much more productive and awake when I get dressed and ready for the day. With RevTown, you don't even have to give up comfort for style. The company was founded by ex-Under Armour executives who designed their apparel using proprietary fabric consisting of Italian milled denim infused with the same material found in football uniforms and yoga pants. It gives their jeans that athletic stretch, so you'll have an amazing fit with the comfort of your favorite loungewear. You can shop for all of RevTown jeans styles today by clicking on the link in the description, so check it out. Now, back to the show. Let's take a look at what the Netflix film and the anime/manga have in common. Similarities. Both have roughly the same premise. Teenager Light discovers a notebook that's fallen from the sky. This is no ordinary notebook though. It has a special power. If you write a person's name in it, they die. Oh, and a bonus, the notebook comes with a large Shinigami or death god named Ryuk, who really likes apples. Light decides to use the notebook to kill criminals under the nickname of Kira or Killer. His murders completely stump the police, including his dad, who's on the force. So they call in an international detective named L, who quickly becomes suspicious of Light. And that's pretty much where the similarities end. There are so many changes that we only have time to focus on the most significant ways that the movie altered the story. So let's take a look at the first difference. Difference number 1. Light is not a compelling or believable protagonist. In the anime and manga, Light Yagami is a genius, like National Merit Scholar, top student in his university class, the police ask him to consult on cases kind of genius. And this is key to the story's success. The plot is powered largely by his insane brilliance. The tension between Light and L is so riveting because they're pretty much equally matched in terms of wits, deductive abilities, and strategic planning. They're each other's only worthy adversaries. Light's outsized smarts also make it possible to believe that a high schooler is getting away with murdering hundreds of people, playing 4D chess with gods of death, and fooling everyone around him. It also helps that he's popular, charming, and personable, so, you know, the whole sociopathic serial killer package. In the film, though, Light Turner is just a normal kid, almost comically stupid when compared to Light Yagami. He's supposedly book smart, but totally lacking in Yagami's street smarts, logical reasoning abilities, and common sense. Film Light shows no short-term or long-term planning skills.
You put my name in it, didn't you?
It was only if you took the book, and I thought I could convince you not to take it.
Are you kidding me?
He also can't lie to save his life, much less manipulate everyone around him like the anime character does. Now this is important because it robs the film of something that was critical to the anime's success. If Light's not a genius, there's no detective procedural, no game of wits, no high-minded ideas of justice, no social engineering of the Kira task force. Instead, it's just one chaotic, unconvincing mess. In short, the anime is interesting to watch because Light is so brilliant. In contrast, the film has to do some gymnastics to accommodate his significantly less formidable intelligence. Which brings us to difference number 2. Rules don't matter. One of the most fascinating parts of the anime is watching Light, and to some extent, Misa, his Death Note wielding girlfriend, expertly utilizing the rules of the Death Note to accomplish his goals and avoid being caught. Light meticulously tests the note.
デスノートの使い方を利用するんだ。死因を書くとさらに6分40秒。
To the point where he learns rules that not even Ryuk, its Shinigami overlord, knew about.
デスノートは死因や死の状況を先に書き、後から名前を書き込めばその通りになるんだ。
へえ、俺も知らないことを。
Some of the more fantastical killings in the anime still feel somewhat believable because they fall within the rules of the universe. In the film, the rules seem less like hard boundaries and more like suggestions, constantly shifting, almost as if for the screenwriter's convenience. The breaches are numerous. Light kills Watari with the note, despite not knowing his entire name. He also does at least one conditional death, saying that Mia will die only if she takes the notebook from him, which violates the essential premise of the Death Note.
Rule 1, the human whose name is written in this note shall die.
Light also uses the note to declare that he will survive his fall from the Ferris wheel, which goes pretty far beyond the clearly established powers of the notebook. Another big difference is the film's new rule, which allows you to control someone without killing them, as long as you destroy their page in the note before they are scheduled to die.
Rule 89 says, if the person who writes a name destroys its page prior to the death being carried out, the target will be spared.
In the anime, you could control someone, but they were always gonna die in the end. Although the film doesn't spend much time exploring the possibilities of this difference, it's a huge deal. The film's Death Note isn't just a death note, it's also a survival note, and a mind control note, and a sort of grab bag of powers. Since the film is less interested in making its characters follow a strict set of rules, the Death Note becomes an object of ultimate power, totally beholden to its owner's whims, rather than a device that must be used correctly in order to work. This makes it much less interesting. Although it makes sense because Light Turner doesn't seem bright enough to use it even with the neutered rules of the film. It also fundamentally changes the story's track. In the anime, Light's aim is ultimate power, to be a god. He's got smarts, looks, and charm on his side. Other than the team of cops and detectives on his tail, his power doesn't face many constraints, which is why the Death Note's rules are so important. They are limiting factors, repeatedly forcing him to alter his strategy. In the film, the note is more of a blunt weapon, wielded at a whim and without constraint. Sure, there's still a few rules, at least in theory.
No shark attacks while someone's on the toilet.
But even those don't seem to be rigorously enforced. Instead, the major limiting factor for Light Turner is himself, his own social and intellectual shortcomings. But the film isn't content merely to forego the rules that made the anime so compelling. It misses out on some major themes too, which brings us to difference number 3. Justice doesn't matter. One of the anime's central themes is the question, what constitutes justice? Is it the swift punishment of wrongdoers and the promise of a world without crime? Or due process and checks on power? This question is explored both in the conflict between Kira and the task force and in the musings of secondary characters. The anime never gives us an answer, although it leaves hints.
キラを捕まえればキラは悪。キラが世界を支配すればキラは正義。
The film, on the other hand, seems pretty uninterested in questions of justice. It gestures towards the concept with lines like,
I was just gonna kill all the bad guys and the good guys would win.
but that's about as complex as it gets. Even when Light initially lays out the idea of Kira, he seems much more interested in the promise of becoming a god rather than in creating a new, more just world.
What they want is a god.
Now this is big for 2 reasons. The first is that, like the rules of the Death Note, the central thematic question, what is justice, gives the story depth. We didn't just watch the anime because it had compelling characters or a fun soundtrack. The show's draw was that it forced us to grapple with our own philosophies on justice, punishment, and authority. And although many people have strong opinions on whether Light was right or wrong, it's hardly a settled question. But it is a question that the anime continues to ask right up until the final episode. But there's more. The anime's opposing theories of justice frame the relationship between L and Light. Though at odds, the two are frequently presented as parallel, more similar than they are different, and each other's only intellectual equals.
あなたにはエルに似たもの、近いものを感じたんです。
Each has a competing idea of justice, and their pursuit of that justice motivates their conflict. Removing those philosophical concepts from the story only serves to weaken the relationship between L and Light, making their story more Tom and Jerry than Sherlock and Moriarty. Without a vision of justice to anchor Light's character, it's not surprising that his choices become less interesting. Which brings us to difference number 4. Light never fully breaks bad. Mia does it for him. Some of the darkest choices Light makes in the anime, like the premeditated murder of an entire FBI team, are also some of the most important for the development of Kira's self-conception as a harsh and unyielding god. When Light chooses to kill Agent Ray Penberg and uses the Death Note to force him to kill his team,
彼は知らず知らずのうちに自分の仲間を殺したことになる。
it feels like a departure from the boy who only wanted to destroy the worst kind of criminals. Even though he already tried to kill L, the murder of 12 agents hits different. In the anime, Misa Amane is not exactly preventing Light from going full Saruman. In fact, whatever evil move he has up his sleeve, she probably wants to help. Misa doesn't have much of a personality beyond loving Light, and is often played off as a self-centered airhead. Mia Sutton in the film is certainly not an airhead, but she lacks even a cursory backstory or any real characterization beyond murderous hot chick. As soon as she learns about the Death Note, she's all in.
That woman and her kids are only alive right now because of what you did. What is there to feel guilty about?
But why? Despite being a central character, a love interest, and the closest thing the film has to an antagonist, we don't know anything about her motivations or interests beyond cheerleading. She seems to serve one role in the film, and that's to divert any blame from Light. In the anime, it's a shocking choice when Light kills all the FBI agents.
日本から捜査官全員が死亡したとの知らせが入った。すべて心臓麻痺。キラに殺されたとしか思えない。
But it's critical in the development of Kira, who is willing to murder enemies, not just criminals. It's an important moment for Light, who decides that anyone who stands in his way, not just L, must be evil and deserving of death. But in the film, Light never goes there. Mia kills the FBI agents. Mia ultimately kills Watari. Mia wants to kill Light's father.
Are you out of your mind? It's my f***ing dad!
Yeah, and he just dared us to kill him on live television.
They even managed to blame Mia for her own demise because she chooses to take the notebook, triggering the conditional death Light had written. This lets Light off the hook for everything. Well, mostly everything.
The individual known as Kira, as I'm sure you're aware, has taken credit for over 400 deaths.
That choice, to absolve Light of some of the more poignant examples of wrongdoing, essentially splits the character in two. Instead of one complex anti-hero battling his own impulses, the film divides his personality between Light and Mia. Light is the conflicted, misguided good guy.
We're not the good guys anymore.
And Mia is the dark architect of evil.
Now give me my f***ing book, okay?
This leaves them each as a half-formed character, which actually explains a lot. Difference number 5. There's no moral to the story. In the anime, Light faces off against the anti-Kira task force in a warehouse. He escapes, but as he runs away, Ryuk writes Light's name in his own death note and kills him. In the film, Light orchestrates both Mia's deadly fall from a Ferris wheel and his own survival using the death note. He wakes up in a hospital and confesses everything to his dad. Meanwhile, L discovers a page from the death note hidden in Mia's calculus book and considers killing Light by writing his name in it. The scene ends in a cliffhanger. We'll never know whether L killed Light. In contrast, the anime had been foreshadowing Ryuk's killing of Light since the beginning, and his death at the hands of the Shinigami brings a logical and poetic conclusion to his narrative arc.
そしてお前が死んだ時、俺がお前の名前を俺のノートに書くことになるが。
There are consequences to making yourself a god, and Light's murder is a fitting end to a story about hubris and justice. But in the film, there are no conclusions, probably because there were no deep questions to answer in the first place. By leaving the ending up to the viewer's interpretation, the movie avoids committing to any strong character choices, which is consistent with the rest of the film. L killing Light would have been a wild choice for a character who has trained his entire life to solve crimes without killing. It would have been perhaps even more alarming if L chose not to kill Light, and the story ended with no consequences of Kira's months of slaughter. By painting themselves into a corner, they were forced to choose between two bad endings, and so chose to have no ending at all. In an interview, director Adam Wingard said, "In some of our test screenings, some people actually thought something was going to happen to the dad at the end, or something else. So we purposely left it open, to leave the interpretation up to you about what had happened, what might happen." Of course, Death Note endings tend to vary. It's one of the only ways that the anime significantly diverges from the manga. In the original story, Light never escapes the warehouse where he was confronted by the police task force. Mikami, a character who sacrifices himself for Light in the anime, completely turns on him in the manga. As Light begs for him to write everyone's name in the Death Note, Mikami calls him scum. Light turns to Ryuk for aid, but Ryuk actually writes Light's name in his Death Note, killing him. Light Yagami's last few moments alive are spent clinging to Ryuk's legs, screaming that he doesn't want to die. It's a startling image to see Light, once confident that he was a literal god, reduced to a sniveling heap, alone in a warehouse, pleading for help. The manga also has an epilogue chapter that isn't included in the anime, which features 2 members of the task force discussing the events in the warehouse and shows a mysterious group of Kira worshippers paying tribute to him. Ryuk killing Light inside a warehouse versus outside a warehouse might seem like a big deal to us, but compared to how ridiculous the film gets, it's safe to say that the manga and the anime are still pretty much the same story. Now, there's no way that Netflix could have fit the anime's entire 37-episode story arc into a feature-length film, but some of the core parts of the narrative, the philosophical questions of justice, Light's genius, the parallels with L, leaving those out feels like a big mistake. The 2006 Japanese live-action film does it much better, though it's by no means a perfect movie. It succeeds in large part by sticking closely to the manga. It ends after Light kills the widowed fiancé of one of the dead FBI agents. For comparison, that happens just 7 episodes into the anime. By taking their time, they get more room to develop characters and add nuance. And as a bonus, only 20% of the original source material set it up nicely for a couple of sequels. As you can tell, we have a lot of feelings about Netflix's Death Note. But what do you think? Is this adaptation a total bummer, or did we somehow miss its subtle brilliance? And most importantly, let us know if you've seen that musical. Big thanks to our patrons for all your support. Hit that subscribe button with the power of a Shinigami, and be sure to ring that bell. As always, thanks for watching. Peace.